All right, welcome back to another tutorial from creatingtracks.com. I've already picked out my kick samples and here's what they sound like. And one more time. Okay, so I have 4 audio tracks here and I have grouped them together and I'm going to start dragging my samples in here. All right, now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the second half of these clips because I don't like my kicks to be long. I like them to be short. And I'm going to solo my first kick and here's what it sounds like. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab an EQ, and in this EQ I'm going to put a low cut or a high pass, and I'm going to pick the other one. And I'm going to start moving the frequency wheel around to see what it sounds like. And I'm also going to reduce the gain around 3900 hertz. And I'm going to fade this out a little bit so that it doesn't have a long release because I like my kicks short. But you can always make it longer. And this is, again, a personal preference, so there's no right or wrong. It's just how long you want your kick to be. I personally like them short, so I'm going to keep it this way. And the second thing I'm going to do is on my other high sample, which sounds like this. I'm going to take an EQ and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to roll off the frequencies, the lower frequencies, so that I'm left with just the high end because I want a little bit more of a release to my kick. And that sounds about right. And now I'm going to take the start point and start moving it around because I don't want the attack of that sample. So I'm going to fade it in a little bit and change the fade out just a little bit and shorten the sample. And let's play it. Okay, so this doesn't sound like anything. So I'm going to take an overdrive. And in that overdrive, I'm going to turn the dynamics to 0. I'm going to put the dry wet to 100%, take the tone up to 100. And I'm going to take the drive and turn it all the way down. And I'm going to press play and slowly start bringing my drive up to see what it sounds like. Okay, that sounds good. And here's what the first 2 samples sound like together. All right, so what I can do now is I can move around my second sample and it's going to give me some really cool sounds. So I'm going to move it by quite a bit and slowly start moving it in and see what it sounds like. So you can hear how that's completely changing the sound even when I move it just a little bit. Okay, so I like it like this, but you can always move it around based on your preference. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to reverse this sample. And originally it sounds like this. But when I hit reverse, it's going to change the sound. Sweet. So I really like it this way a lot. So I'm going to solo my mid kick now and fade it out just a little bit. And here's what it sounds like. And here's the original sample. And you can hear how there's too much sub information in this, but I just wanted the mid. So I'm going to make it shorter. I'm going to let the sub sample handle that. All right, so now I'm going to grab an EQ and I'm going to remove some of the high frequencies because I already have 2 of my samples taking care of that. So I'm going to start rolling off frequencies over about 1,000 or 2,000 hertz or something close to that. And I'm also going to start removing some of my low frequencies, the sub frequencies, close to about like 80 hertz or something. And just a little bit of fine adjustments around 200 hertz. And here's the first 3 samples played together. And I'm just gonna move some of these samples around to see how they sound. I want my kick to be just a little shorter. Okay, that sounds about right. So for a sub bass, I'm gonna solo it and bring an EQ on it, and I'm gonna cut everything over about 100 hertz. And what that's gonna do is leave me with just the sub frequencies. So I also don't need the attack of my sub bass, so I'm gonna fade it in just a little bit. And I'm also going to make it shorter, not too much, but just a little shorter. Now we're gonna play the mid and the sub together and see what it sounds like. And I can also change the transpose of my mid clip and see what kind of results it gives me. Okay, I like it here a lot. And here's what all the samples sound like together. Pretty cool. But I still think the sub is too loud, so I'm going to turn it down and slowly bring it up. And I think this sounds about right. And you can also move the sub in time, just like we did with our high 2 sample. So I'm going to move it by quite a bit at first and then slowly start bringing it closer. And this is why I also don't like to make my sub samples longer and keep them short, because you can move them in time and make the whole sample long. But I think it sounds tighter over here. So you can keep moving this around based on however you want your kicks to sound. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take an EQ and put it on my kick group. And before the EQ, I'm going to place a utility plugin. And on the utility, we're going to change the width to about 20%. And what that does is it's going to make the kick sound a little more centered. And without the utility, it sounds like this. So it's more wide. And here's width. I can even turn it up a little more. 40. That sounds good. Okay, and I'm going to turn up the gain by 0.5%. And on the EQ, I'm going to take a low cut, a steep one, and I'm going to cut everything below 60 hertz. I'm also going to remove some of the mid frequencies and some of the higher frequencies around the 4000 hertz. Now I'm going to add a compressor. And the first thing we're going to do is turn off the makeup gain. I'm going to change the ratio to around 4:1. Change the attack to about 30 milliseconds. And I'm also going to keep a slower release at about 250 milliseconds. And then I'm going to start moving my threshold down on my compressor and see how it affects the gain reduction. And I'm also going to increase the output gain by 3 dB. And then I'll take another EQ and I'll roll off some frequencies below 70 to 80 hertz. And this time I'm going to use the slanted low cut and not the steep one. And I'm also going to remove a little bit of the mid frequencies over here and increase some of the highs just by a little bit. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a saturator, turn the dry wet down by about 50%. And then I'm going to hit play and I'm going to turn the drive up slowly to see what it does to the sound. So you can always keep making these fine adjustments, but that's basically it. This brings us to the end of our tutorial. Definitely stay tuned for more next week. Until next time.